Beautiful. Welcome, welcome, welcome to week 4 of the Unconventional Man. How's your week been, gentlemen? Yes, it's been more challenging than average. And that is just the way it goes sometimes. We've just got to keep pushing, keeping our head and our mind focused in the right direction. I am just coming back from vacation. My vacation was great. And of course, you come back to work and woo, you got to catch up. So I understand turmoil. I understand the ups and downs. That's part of it. And that's honestly part of why what we're doing is going to work. You're working on developing a set of skills that you can use anywhere, any place. Some of the videos I'm going to show you this week kind of give you a demonstration of that. You don't need the exact setup every single time. You don't need the perfect storm to make it happen, and that's part of your focus for the entire program. So the message here is, last time we talked about stacking and finding spaces to make it work. That's your versatility. And the other side of it is this is your discipline, holding yourself accountable to the plan. We all have challenges. You will fall off. Life is ebb and flow. The practice is an ebb and flow. So what you've got to hold on to is a set of patient persistence. You've got to keep going. You've just got to get up as fast as you can and forget about the mistake and get on to the next time that you said you were going to practice, right? The habit is the skill, and that comes across multiple ways. It shows up in how you're doing it, and it also shows up in how you practice. So the more you emphasize the skill you're working on, it becomes a habit in the movement. The last thing I want to say to you guys is I need you guys to speak up. Like, I need you to share your stumbling blocks. I know you're getting some feedback from me directly, but the more you speak into it in advance, the more I can customize the week ahead to support what it is you guys are doing. Okay, so breathing. This week we talked about the triple inhale, and basically I'm putting a diagram here to help you visualize the spaces at the top third that you're going to fill into. The bottom third, I think, is the easiest one. Like, really, if you put your hand on your belly and as you breathe, you should feel your hands move forward. You want to be able to push your lower lungs, your belly, more in front of you than your chest. That's a good measure for how far you want it to be able to go. At the top third, the middle third is best felt through the back of the lungs, because if you think about the front of your chest, you have your heart, you have your sternum bone, which is harder to move than the ribs, which have fingers. So for the middle third, push your air out the back of the lungs, okay, back in the sides. And for the top third, you're gonna find these spaces in the collarbones, okay? So you're gonna pull up and you're gonna feel the neck and the top back of the shoulders, the traps. So these are the areas that you're gonna expand into on your triple inhale breathing. I need to point out that, when you inhale and pause, it's not an exhale, it's a pause. And because the inhale has active momentum, you'll feel it. It'll feel like you're shrinking down. You'll literally feel like your skin kind of shrink down onto the new size of the lungs, right? So it's almost like, so once you feel that, wait till you get to the top one and then you settle into it. And then start to shift your bones and your spine around. And that's how you're going to learn to use your lungs to help you get more space. Big, bigger, biggest. That's your mindset as you move through the breathing. Okay, rolling the upper back. So there's two big regions to the back, right? There's the lower and the upper back. And so in the lower back, we really talked about, let me focus on the upper back. So in the upper back, what we want to focus on is that the difference is that The upper back has the ribs, whereas the lower back has nothing. Okay, so I put diagrams here to help you guys see that to move the upper back spine, you've got to factor in everything that connects to it because they all go together. Okay, so now maybe you can see why breathing is so important, because the breathing number one is the thing that's going to loosen up the space in between the rib cage so that those things can move. Now, if you look at this first picture of the skeleton facing you, you'll see your pecs and you'll see your abs, and that goes down into your scoop muscles or your superior scoop muscles, right? So we already know about scoop. We talked about that with the lower back. The part under that first box, like that's where your ribs are. There are muscles in between there. And so when I say cinch your ribs together, I would like you to imagine that you could pull those rib cage, the lower floating ribs, closer to the midline of the body. That's cinching your ribs. Now, what that's going to do is help pull open space through the ribs at the back of the body, because as you squeeze the front, the back is going to open, okay? That cinching action is vital to your C curve and even more vital to your J curve, okay? And so as you do your lower back rolling exercises and you're opening your back into extension, you're going to cinch your ribs into flexion so that the back spine opens with support, okay? So that's what that is about. And all these boxes, these red boxes, just give you a different angle of perception of the muscles that cross that area that are going to assist in that action. Okay, so right now, because in the shape that we're getting into this week is Cobra. And so the upper back opens and Cobra is a lifting. And so I'm connecting for you the ability to create the range of motion through passive motion, which is the roller, and through active motion, which is your stretching and your Pilates. So that is how all of this fits together. And I'm really hoping that the pictures give you a visual of what you are seeking. One more that I want to point out is the box on the far right. And that one really helps you see that your scoop muscles are going to assist in lifting your legs. So if you're feeling your hip flexors hurting you when you're doing single leg circles, it means you need to scoop harder, because as you can see, there's a scoop that levers all the way to the top of your legs. It will be easier to lift your legs with the scoop than it will be with the hip flexor. This picture is, a demonstration of the shape that we're working on, but you guys have the video, so I'm not going to talk a whole lot about that. What I do want to point out here in these is that there's a shape in the neck that aligns with the spine. Okay, so if you focus on the top left, she's got a proper neck alignment, right? In that it's part of the spine and she's reaching. I don't even know if that's intentional or not. Now, if you look to the top right, as she arches over that, so there's a shape for her back, which is natural, but that head now is out of place, right? It's fallen all the way open, and that the spine is not. So when I demonstrate and when you practice, when you're putting your hands behind your head, it's so that you can pull your head longer and find the back of the skull. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So when you're stretching and opening the upper back, everything that connects to it is part of the chain that you need to open to make it successful. So what does that mean? That means we have to open the neck muscles, the shoulder muscles, the shoulder blade muscles, and those muscles that cross the arms. So the upper back, the entire torso, everything from your bottom ribs up, is part of the functionality that we're going to work on as we open up the upper back. This diagram, this is kind of to help you guys get in connection with some of the language that I'm using, and where I want you to feel inside for that. I almost wish I could move my picture right now. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. Okay, so the first thing I started with was scoop. So that's the red, right? And that's you're pulling your belly button in and up. And so scoop runs through that region where there is, just your guts, right? And so there's big tendons underneath your guts, and you're learning how to pull them closer together and create space. The longest low back you have, which means you're trying to make yourself taller. So we understand what that skill is. Okay, the green, perch. So this skill you're going to feel in the series that I taught this week, which is seated forward stretch and open leg rocker, because this skill is about sitting up tall with your butt on the floor. So when you sit up tall, you're gonna feel, in yoga they used to call them your sit bones. I actually thought that was a great analogy, because it's the parts of your bun that you sit on. So when you try to sit up tall, you're going to feel your sit bones come together, but they don't come straight together. They wrap together because they're part of your glutes, your bum complex, right? So that action is called perching, okay? And so that action supports your pelvic floor, which helps you get taller and makes it easier to scoop into full height. And it's also the start of how we straighten our legs, right? So when we're straightening our legs, we're not just pushing our quad, but we're also perching so that we can get full length through our pelvis and our thigh and our butt, our fast. That's what I was taught. Like, I like that name, fast, right? So that part. So that's what perching is. So understand now. Now you're understanding scoop. Now I'm saying perch. I'm hoping you guys are practicing it while I'm saying it, because you need to be able to bring it to life wherever you need it so that you can find it in the exercises. So feel your scoop, feel your perch right now. Okay, good. Cinch and pinch now. So cinching is the front rib. So I like to imagine that your ribs are a football, okay? And you've seen the stitching on the football. And I literally want you to imagine that you can pull your ribs in together. Okay, so when you pull your ribs in together, you're going to feel your shoulders roll forward. Good. So you're going to pull your ribs in together. Now you're going to pinch your shoulder blades back behind you while holding your shoulder, the cinch. Okay, so it's cinch and pinch. And as you do that, it's going to feel like, I like to imagine that your head is like your body's a beam, and your head is like that little stalk that's pushing up. So it's like your body kind of wraps down and away as your head goes up, and that's part of that pinching and cinching action. Okay, so pinching and cinching is it's how we connect our arms to our torso and our torso to our lower body. Right? So it's a skill that you want to practice applying when you're doing your training techniques, so that it becomes an automatic thing for you when you're just doing stuff and not thinking about it, because it's not really something you can think about while you're doing a sport per se. Okay, the last one. I won't say the hardest one, but it sometimes gets lost because we sometimes forget that our neck is part of the spine and that our head is a vertebrae. And so you'll hear me say stuff like, make your neck long, or get as tall as you can, okay? And so the way to feel that is that you want to imagine that you had a grapefruit or an orange, and that you have to hold on to it with your chin in your chest, okay? And that action is going to pull your head kind of in and back, and it'll kind of go in and back and up. So it'll almost be like, imagine you're hanging from the ceiling by the back of your head. So the back of your neck gets as long as possible. That action is the action of stretching, elongating the cervical spine. Okay, and so that elongating action keeps happening when you C curve and you J curve. Right? You don't let your head go in. You're always holding that grapefruit. And that action is going to make sure you have your erectors and your flexors on, so you have the longest neck shape totally. Okay, so these are the 4 actions that do govern how you manage your spine length. Okay, and so get comfortable with the cues, the words, because if you know it, when I say perch, scoop, cinch, tall, perch, scoop, cinch, tall, and you know what to do, or you know that it's the emphasis of the exercise when you're practicing. Now you have the direction to make sure that you can always get better inside the movement. Okay, so we talk about this will feel, when we get into Indian clubs, you'll feel you'll understand why I selected Indian clubs as a tool for this mobility work. So, it's great for us to open up our torso and open up our back. However, we've got to remember that the purpose of our torso really is to transfer the power from our legs through to our arms, right? So to have a healthy upper back complex is to also have healthy shoulders, healthy elbows, healthy wrists, healthy fingers, right? The whole chain. It's all one thing, right? So the bottom left diagram, it's the art of throwing. And it's the perfect demonstration how everything works together, from the wind up till pushing into the floor. If you look at the second diagram, with that knee up, that's the twist. When we line our back and we twist, that's that twist, into a lunge with an arm back. So that's your hip flexor to your shoulders, right? And then as you come over the top, that's your abs in action. That's Cobra. Can you see Cobra in the fourth movement? Right, okay, and then following through into flexion. So this snapping, that whipping action of the shoulders and the arms is part of the upper back complex. Why am I telling you this? Because when you're watching the videos or when you're learning to explore upper back movements, you've got to incorporate arm movements in there. And so in the Pilates stuff, we will use arm circles, which is a straight arm, moving like a sword in a specific way. And so, okay, that's why I picked Indian clubs, because Indian clubs force fluid flexibility in that upper back core hip complex, which is a foundation of healthy and fluid movement. Okay, so yeah, like your upper back, arms all go together, and we will open that through practicing fluid movement patterns. These diagrams are to help you visualize what we're talking about. So you can see, when the shoulders move, how the neck reacts. The top two diagrams talk about the basic movements of the shoulder blades, the scapula. So there's your sternum or your chest cavity with your ribs. And then there's your scapula, that's the bone, your shoulder blade bone. And then there's your humerus. Those are the three big parts those are three big bones that you must control to govern your ability to create a healthy movement in the upper back and arm complex, right? So your spine articulates like a wave and side to side. Your shoulders basically go up, down, and they do this thing called protraction and retraction, right? And so when you add those together, you kind of learn how to wrap your shoulders into your body and cinch in your ribs and get maximum height out of your spine. That's how you do it. Okay, our shape this week was Cobra, and I know you guys have all seen this before, and I want you to differentiate between how you practice it when you're stretching your shapes and how you're practicing it during Pilates. So in Pilates, we practice Swan, and Swan is very specific. So in the top left corner, I'm highlighting for you the areas in Swan that are most important for you to work on. So number one is the feet. Okay, and so when we say point the toes, we really mean point the toes. If I was to compare these two diagrams, the lady has her toes pointed way better. Why? Because more of the top of her foot is on the floor. That's what you're aiming for. So it's not, you're not trying to crunch your toes towards you. You're trying to push your toes away from you so you can get your ankles into the mat, okay? And so if you add to that your wrapping action, okay, and your pushing action, this is actually a great stretch on the feet, okay? So you've got to get good at that. So box number two is the knees, okay? When your feet are fully pushed into the mat, your knees will come off. think about it. If you stand up straight and you flex your quads all the way, your knees are behind your hips. Okay, so this is the same thing. For me to push my feet into the mat, I've got to straighten my legs with my quads, and it's going to lift my knees. So focus on your feet and then your knees, okay? So now if your knees are up, the other point of contact that's pushing is going to be your pelvis. That's box number 3. That's your hip bone. Okay, so in swan, your hip bone will stay on the mat always. What you're trying to do is hold the straight line L of your pointed toes touching and your pelvis touching, and then you're going to elongate out of your spine and lift as high as you can. Okay, like not, there's a shape called the ideal, into your perfect arch, okay? So that is what we're accomplishing in swan when we practice it. Now, when you are stretching into it, doing cobra, you can play as much as you want, right? But what you'll find is the straighter you keep your legs, especially when we do some of the twisting variations, the straighter you'll keep your legs, the more the stretch will travel the length of the leg and into the upper body. See, what you have to see here, and you'll see this more in the next picture, is that what you're creating here is a flexibility through the front of your spine and a strength through your heel to seat connection. Because when you stand up and do this shape, that's the shape that you would take if you were throwing something. Think of a soccer throw-in, okay? That's the shape of a soccer throw-in, okay? Bottom right box talks about the shoulder blades and the elbows, okay? So while this lady on the bottom, so to be fair, she's probably doing like a yoga posture where she doesn't have to do it this way, but you can see her ribs are sinking towards the mat, okay? Whereas in the gentleman on the top, even though his pelvis is off the mat, which I don't want, you can see that his elbows are engaged and his ribs are cinched in, okay? So when we are in the position that the lady's in, okay, even when we're there, you are still going to cinch your rib cage in and pull your belly button in and up. Okay, so it's always only your hips and your toes on the mat. Okay, cobra, we're going to have some fun doing that one because that's a great posture. As I was searching for these pictures, I came across this thing that said, it said, this is not a good back stretch. And I was like, well, yeah, because it's not a back stretch. It's a back flex. It's a back strengthener, right? You're trying to use those muscles behind you to lift up. It's a stretch for the abs, right? And it's always that way. And so, okay, so bottom left corner picture of the lady. That's a great way to practice the standing back extension with your hands behind your head, because your head is very, very heavy, and the truth is your arms are connected to the upper back complex anyway. So to hold it with your hands and pull it into the right shape is actually going to be supporting the right muscles to help you get deeper into that shape. So that's why I practice it. That's why I'm going to teach you guys to practice it. But I'm pointing it here so you guys can see. So and so when you stand up and do this position, you've got to ground your heels. And you've got to squeeze your glutes, right? And you've got to pull yourself into the middle, right? And so what I'm saying is those actions are essential to the movement, period. And so when we practice it in swan and cobra, you've still got to do those things, okay? So basically, the reason is the stuff that you see on the board. This is why spine extension skills are so important and why it's two-sided, right? So part one is scooping, which is the front side strength. Scooping, cinching is the front side strength. And then pinching and perching is the back side strength, okay? And that's how you're going to balance out your spine strength skills. We talked about this one already. Okay, Pilates workshop. So picture number 2 is essentially what I would say the foundation position of the skills that we're developing in this Pilates workshop. All right, so what I do love about this gentleman's posture is that you can see that straight spine and you can see him scooped in and you can see his legs are so well extended that his heels literally are coming off the mat. Okay, so that's how much effort you're pushing into it. And if that feels like work, that's fine. That's what it's supposed to be. What you could do is practice this position sometimes against the wall, or sometimes watch TV on the floor in this position and lean back into your sofa and still scoop to a straight spine, right? So you can practice the feeling of grounding with straight legs and having a straight spine at the same time, okay? Picture 2 and picture 1 is the idea of what happens when we take seated forward stretch and we stand up to it. So when we do our wide-legged stretches and we're moving side to side, and I expect you at that time to understand how to perch and how to scoop and how to twist, in the standing one, because we learned the skill in Pilates, right? And so this is me demonstrating that all of these things are connected. And so the muscles that you need while you're standing up are the muscles that you practice while you're sitting down, right? Beautiful. And here's some ideas of shapes of the spine. Well, just to, I guess the only thing I want to say, twisting of the spine doesn't really happen that much, to be perfectly honest. If we really want to turn around, we use our head. Like our head can move like 180 degrees. Our torso really only moves less than 90, okay? And your lower lumbar spine, that moves less than 30, right? So part of turning around or twisting most of it happens in your hips, and you can see that in the top row, okay? So upper back, lower back, hips are always connected in a twist, and that action starts in the legs. So knowing that's how it applies to life, that's going to help you understand why perch, scoop, cinch, pinch, those skills, and being able to do them always is going to help you put this all together and be very, very successful. Okay, gentlemen, so questions for you now. So, I'm emailing. Not everybody is doing their feedback email, and I know that that's hard, just like getting these things out is hard. But it's important for both of us. It's obvious why it's important to me, because, I want to know what you guys are doing. I want to hear your results. I want to hear your obstacles so I can help you overcome them. Why it's important to you is because it's like your first tool of accountability is being able to say it, to acknowledge it. You know what I mean? And so because in that acknowledgement, you give space for the solution. You get to come out of working on it or dealing with it and move towards working on it, right? And that's honestly what we're all trying to do together in this program. Okay, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed week 4. I had a lot of fun doing this one, teaching this one. I feel like I'm growing in terms of what I want to say and keeping it concise. But let me know how to make this easier and better for you. All right? Until next week, be unconventional.